So you started your weaving journey, you've got all your basics, and then there's other things that start to catch your eye, and it's like, oh, I want that, and I want that, and I want that, and you can't have everything unless, of course, you're rich. I am not. I have found that weavers, we love secondhand things. We are also very resourceful and creative to avoid having a lot of expense in our hobby if we can. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So always, listen for tips of what people have and what people do, because it can obviously save you a lot of money in the long run. So one of the things that you probably may want to invest in is, again, these are all like to haves, not have to haves, right? It's something that you decide if it fits your needs. So some sort of bench. Obviously for your loom, most likely you're going to be in a seated position. For a floor loom for sure. Table loom, depending on the height of the table, you could be standing. So if you want a seat, I've used, obviously I've used computer, desk chairs. I've broken 2 benches, so I stay away from the actual wooden benches because of my rocking motion. I tend to shear off a leg at some point. So, I've tried, right now I'm actually using my husband's drum throne. I find it's cushy because I find wooden benches are really hard on my bum. And even though I've got padding down there, it still causes me problems with my back. So the drum throne, actually, it's adjustable to the height that I need. It also has padding. So again, there's many kind of options. You don't have to go with a weaving bench necessarily, but again, a weaving bench usually will also have storage for it as well. So again, that's up to you to decide. Another thing that you're going to want to have is a way to wind your bobbin. You can do it manually. Nobody wants to do it manually. There are electric bobbin winders that are fairly expensive, and there are also a not so expensive version, which is your manual bobbin winder. So basically it's a gear. You're just literally putting the bobbin onto a rod. You're just winding it manually. Again, goes a whole lot faster than you doing it by hand. You may, in previous videos, if you've watched, you've seen different types of shuttles that I've shown you. Usually, you're going to start off with one shuttle. I started off with one boat shuttle. I've slowly expanded my repertoire of shuttles as time has gone on, depending on, I need it for this project, or, I want to try this project down the road. And again, always keeping an eye on stuff that's perhaps secondhand, right, instead of, buying new to repurpose something, okay? Your loom typically will come with a certain number of reeds. The most common reeds that looms come with tend to be 12 dent and 10 dent, or both. Meaning, again, remember the dent, it's in French dent, which is teeth, so it's kind of like the spacing. And so if it's a 10 dent reed, it means that you have 10 of those in 1 inch. If it's a 12 dent reed, you've got 12 of them in 1 inch. So the higher the number, the narrower those dents will be, okay? So I initially had 2 that came with my loom. I bought a third one, an 8 dent reed. They are not cheap depending on the length of the reed that you need. My loom being a 45-inch loom, it's a fairly expensive thing to invest in another reed. But again, if you have, let's say, a 15-inch loom, well, it's going to be a whole lot cheaper, obviously. You may want to invest in a ball winder. If you're going to use yarn, for example, you may want to wind the balls so as the balls start to fall apart. Okay, so if you look at this one right here, okay, you basically will have, and at some point I'll do a video on how to use this. You have the thread coming through here. It's going to click into, okay, a little notch here, and then as you turn the handle, and you can obviously secure it with this knob onto a table, and as you do this, it's basically winding up a ball just like as if you bought it from the store. I have been given actually a tip, because usually what I did is I would wind it directly on here, you slide it off, but again in time, with as you're starting to use it, it falls apart, and that used to irritate me. So somebody said that to use toilet paper rolls, which I thought, oh, what an interesting idea. So you put the toilet paper roll on top here. It's going to be longer than this. I guess you could cut it to size, I suppose. And you make a little notch where you're going to put the thread and do the same thing. That way it does have a sturdy support inside of it. Another thing that you may want to look at is something called a fringe twister. So I use this for, the first time I did a blanket, I decided I wanted to have a twisted fringe. So just give me a second here to pull it out. So this one is by Leclerc, but again, there's going to be many different companies. And so what happens is that you have fringe twisters that can have 2, 3, or 4. So I bought 3 of them, the triple one. And so what you're doing is that when at the end you've got your fringe and your number of threads, and you divide them between, 2 of these, in my case it could be 3 of these, and then literally you're just going to turn it around and it twists it for you instead of you having to do it manually. Because again, if I had a 45-inch blanket and I had, I can't remember how many I had per side, doing this was a godsend compared to having to do it manually to twist, and to make sure that you had the same kind of twist all the way along, so one wasn't more or less twisted than the other. So again, a huge help if it's something that you want to do with a twisted fringe. Temples is something I don't have, but when you do a blanket, for example, sometimes what's going to happen is that it's going to start pulling in. And so what it is that it's something that clips to the side, and kind of with a weight on it to kind of help kind of pull it out, to keep it stretched out so that it does not, your blanket doesn't look wonky at the end. I don't have something like that at this point. What I have tried using, which is not great, is I have the James clips, which is they're the black triangular clips with the metal prongs that you can open up. I'll put those on the end of my blanket with a weight to help that, but again it's not great. But temples, again, at least the ones that I've looked at, are not cheap, so I've kind of put that off at this point. I don't seem to have a lot of issues with drawing in, so it's not a huge necessity for me. A yarn balance, so that's just your regular balance. I use a kitchen balance that I bought, and again, if you want to figure out, I've got cotton, and I know how much was originally on the spool. I have no idea how much is left. So you could, as I said in a previous video, you could buy a counter and run the thread through the counter to find out exactly the length that you have. But you could also do some quick mathematical calculations to figure out, based on the weight, what you actually have on there. So that's a lot faster than using the counter. Depending on your age, you may want to use a magnifier. I'm getting to that point where I need to use a magnifier to look at small stuff. And you want definitely good overhead light, okay? Whatever you're using. I actually also use a mechanics light, which is, it's an LED. It almost looks like a flower. When I'm trying to thread to slay the reed, it allows me, to see. It gives me a lot more light. I find that as I get older, I need much better lighting than when I was younger there. You may want to have something to be able to count picks. So you can buy a pick glass, which is basically something that has glass. Sometimes it'll have a magnifier on it to make it easier for you to read. So when you're actually weaving, it's going to tell you, it should be this many picks per inch. I don't usually pay a lot of attention to that at this point. I'm still early on. Whatever I end up with, I usually am in love with anyways, so I'm okay with it. But if it's really particular, it's something that you're selling, for example, or you're giving away, and you want to make sure it's exactly the way it needs to be. I had my husband actually 3D print this, and so the inside is 1 inch square, the outside is 2 inch square. And so what I could do is I could put this on top of my weaving, and I can count how many picks basically I've got, in that area just by looking at it. In my case, I probably have to use a magnifying glass to check, depending on the thickness of the thread that I happen to be using. If I'm using yarn, I can see it obviously, just very, very easily. But again, you can buy things like this as well, okay? But again, my husband loves to use his 3D printer, and I try and find reasons for him to use it, okay? You may also want, if your loom allows for it, you may want to buy additional harnesses. Some looms can go from 4 to 8 harnesses so that you don't have to buy a whole new loom. That's an awesome concept. My loom does not offer that potential. So again, that might be something else down the road that you may want to invest in. But you're going to, as you go along, you're going to see all sorts of really cool things, and oh wow, I really want that, or I want to try that, and just think about it. Like, do you really need it? Is it something you're going to really use to justify the cost? And in some cases, yeah, you're going to use it a lot, and it's going to justify the cost and make your life a whole lot easier. Because again, the assumption is that you're doing this hobby because you enjoy it, or again, maybe it's for financial purposes, you want to make it as enjoyable and as efficient and easy for you so that you can get the benefit that you're looking for. Well, I hope that helps, and have yourself a great day.